When we started working on the open data platform, we were essentially aggregating data from a lot of different vendors. So let's go through this example. So here's equity historical. We have these two models. So we have the data model for how the data is returned, and we have the query parameters on how the parameters are sent. So for the parameter set, you can see that we standardize across these three fields. So we have a symbol, we have a start underscore date, we have a date. I mean standardize in the sense that for a developer, they can just use symbol equal for any vendor that is supported by this endpoint. And same with start underscore date. So they don't need to worry if the vendor actually internally calls it starting, if they call it start, if they call it start date with capital D, like the camel case. And so we standardize that to make it very easy for the developer to send the parameters and to switch between vendors as they see fit. And we do the same for the data. So you can expect the date open, I, low, close, like this for all of these different vendors, and then some will have volume, which is like highly recommended to be supported, but is an optional, right? But then the vendors will have different fields, which we also support. So Alpha Advantage also allows you to add like an adjustment field, which you can add, and each vendors will have different things, and then they at the output too, they can support additional fields, so like dividend and things like that. The hard part here is not actually standardizing the inputs or the way that the data is returned. That's actually fairly okay once you kind of see how most vendors do it, and you take kind of the average. You use some common sense to make it the same across the interface. So for instance, a start underscore date will work for whatever asset class you are utilizing. So that is the same within OpenVB ecosystem. The symbology is the hard part, and at some point we started having this master table where we add like how each vendor would call like different tickers, and the master table, the index that we're using was the extent name of the ticker, and it felt like we are adding yet another standard essentially. And this is such a hard problem that we're like, okay, it doesn't make sense for us to be tracking this, because this by itself is probably a startup or like on its own in terms of like resources, and it's just like so inherently difficult problem, right? Because like for instance, a few examples like Mercado Libre, for instance, the ticker is MELI in Nasdaq, whereas like in London Stock Exchange the ticker is something like OCOE. Then we have the reverse problem where for a ticker like AIR, like in NYSE, the company is AAR Group, whereas that same in the Euronext exchange corresponds to Airbus. And so how do you differentiate now that, like it's literally the same ticker name? And it turns out, for instance, in Yahoo Finance, they had like the .pa or something like that to basically refer that this is an international, the international version. But like they need to take a stance regarding what is the AIR on its own versus what is the AIR plus something else. And this varies a lot. And these are for tickers, but also what happens with different class shares. So Berkshire Hathaway, they have the stock class A and B, right? And then you have Yahoo Finance that adds the dash A and dash B to BRK. You have Google that adds the .A, .B, and then you have Bloomberg that does /A, B, and then US. And so each of them takes like an opinionated approach around how to call this ticker. And so it's very hard for us to normalize this. And so the question I have is, how does this problem occur in the age of AI? So for instance, I was thinking, is this something that people will have to worry, or agents will be like trained on so much data that they will be trained on the symbology of the tickers? And basically they know when they are working with a specific data vendor that data, how to call it, because the vendor name is related, and because of how the attention mechanism works, it will understand that, oh, we're talking about this specific vendor, and I've read their documentation, I've been trained on their documentation. Now I kind of expect that like for like long tail tickers, like there might be some issues, or when with training cuts where, for instance, like a ticker gets delisted and then the same ticker gets utilized in the future, there's going to be problems there. But I think for the most part, this is probably going to be solved. I mean, there's still a few things, right? Like, for instance, the ticker symbology, like, Ford is just an F, whereas, like, Tencent Holdings is, like, 0700. Like, like, the model has to be trained on that. Like, otherwise you have to be following the company to know how to track it. But I think that if there's enough data that is trained on this problem, like this might be solved. And so yeah, I just made this video to basically show that. So in this case, like I asked to create a dashboard for NVIDIA with the widgets from, and I gave 4 different vendors, 4 different types of widgets, and looking at NVIDIA, looking at NVIDIA, looking at NVIDIA, looking at NVIDIA. Yeah, these will all like created on the fly. Now this is like a very popular ticker, but I wonder how this works for like, more niche tickers, and if this will even be a problem in the future. Yeah, let me know what you think about it.